But, Sean, let's close out the podcast going away from the NBA, going away from college basketball. We're moving a little bit. Gradually, we're going back into college football here for the Primetime Podcast. It will be not too much longer. We got the rest of May, and then come June, Brandon and I are already previewing college football teams going all the way. And that'll take us from June to August, and then August, the season starts, and we're basically in full swing. But last week, we kind of looked at two teams, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Should he be on the hot seat? We kind of looked at expectations for Jimbo Fisher. This was one we were going to talk about last week. It got shelved. We're now talking about it this week. And basically, we're taking a look at the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And can Scott Frost turn around this, I almost said Alabama, this Nebraska team this season? And before we get into anything, I've got to throw this out because Brandon, A, would be upset if I didn't, and two, I brought this to the table just for him. There's an article, apparently, that Scott Frost does not believe that Central Florida should be national champions, where he said, and I quote, "I completely get behind their argument. I do think it was almost criminal how low they kept UCF in the rankings, and I think it was intentional. But at the end of the day, the playoff system is that the national champion is the team that wins the playoff," end quote. So I thought Brandon would like that because he's always bashing the Golden Knights for claiming themselves national champions. But looking at Scott Frost now in redder pastures at his alma mater of Nebraska, I'll ask you, Bo Pelini's no longer there, hasn't been there for a while. Coach Riley's not there. Can Scott Frost turn around Nebraska this season, or is it going to be a Tom Herman where it's going to be a process and year one might be a little shaky?
This year, I don't think, I mean, it depends on what you think turnaround means. Will they have a losing record? That I think you could definitely see Scott Frost turn them around this year. I think, again, we saw what he did with an 0-8 UCF team and turn them into a 6-7 team that actually made a bowl the next year. And that was with, I think, very little recruits. He was able to take a team with, pretty much the bones, just the draft, the recruits of George O'Leary, George O'Leary, and turn them into a near 500 team. I think that that's possible this year. I think you can probably get back to 500 if you're the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I couldn't tell you the last time they were 500, but it felt like a while. I know they were in a couple bowl games. I think they had 9 wins a couple years ago.
They haven't been to a bowl game since 2016, and they haven't won 10 games in a season since 2012.
Okay.
So since I graduated college, they have not won 10 games in a season.
So I don't think they're going to break that streak of not winning 10 games since 2012. However, I do think that Scott Frost could possibly make some noise and at least win, maybe 5 or 6. It's probably, I'll say 6 games. I think he could win 6 or 7 games this year, just because I think he's able to bring at least a culture that kids are able to buy in. And then once he also, is able to bring in recruits, have a full season of recruiting, work on these players that are up and coming. He has a couple seniors on this team that could, make some noise as well. I think that Scott Frost could definitely at least turn them in the right direction and not have them go 4-8, 3-9, and have them be a laughingstock of the Big Ten again.
Well, and that's the thing that I look at is I think that with Scott Frost, you can look at what he did at UCF and translate that over to where the best thing about Scott Frost is he's a guy that can come into a situation and make a team it might take a year to do it because, 2016, UCF did go 6-7, 4-4 in conference. But like you said, this was a team in 2015 that won 0 games. So winning 6 games was a huge win for them, although they lost their bowl game, and that's why they finished with a losing record overall. This Nebraska team, though, that's the thing it's got to start with is the culture around it. Can he come in, and it looks like already in spring that he is setting a culture that he wants for Nebraska. And I mean, the article that ESPN has where they wrote about it, one of the 4-star recruits that came in out of California who they said underachieved in his 2 seasons at Nebraska said, I mean, it's kind of up to us to be on the same page. So he's kind of coming in, and yeah, he's bringing an energy to this team early on, but Scott Frost is also a guy that it's accountability on the players as well, where it's like, hey, I'm not going to come in and just wave my magic wand and boom, make us a 6-win team year one. Like, they're going to have to put in the work in order for this thing to pay out. The only question is he going to have the talent year one to be able to do that? Because one of the big things that helped him at UCF was, especially this past year, it's not like one player changes at all, but the story like with Shaquem Griffin, where it's like, hey, the old regime didn't even use you. Scott Frost comes in and uses you, and look at what you develop into.
Well, and also look at how many pros have come out of UCF, at least defensively, over the past couple of years. I mean, Shaquem, obviously an example. Mike Hughes just got picked up by your Vikings as well. Shaquem's brother picked up by the Seahawks. I mean, we're churning out NFL pros under the Scott Frost in such a small time that he was there. So, I mean, like, again, the talent was there on that team, and Nebraska still was able to bring in recruits. Mike Riley didn't do a horrible job recruiting. I mean, they didn't have, like, top draft classes or anything like that. But, again, they still had talent on their team, and I think Scott Frost does the best of bringing talent, at least I think better than Mike Riley does, bringing talent out of these players, out of these guys that have been recruited. I think the biggest question, though, for Scott Frost, I know Big Ten, you don't really need great quarterback play, but having great quarterback play is definitely going to help. Scott Frost eases at least worries a bit, and they don't have a guy that's taken snaps in college on their roster right now. They have 4 quarterbacks currently rostered. None of them have played snaps. One's a redshirt freshman. One's a recently committed freshman. Then they have, I think, a sophomore. I think they have 2 sophomores after that. And Patrick O'Brien, one of them, just transferred out as well. So they don't have an answer at the quarterback right now. I think ultimately you're probably going to have a freshman starting as well, because the guy that really stands out to me is this kid from Fresno, California, Adrian Martinez. 6'2", 205, was ranked 56th in the ESPN 300. He's a pocket passer, also seems to have a little bit of athletic ability where he might be dangerous on the feet, and having some wide receiver help on the outside in a stud in the senior Stanley Morgan, and then also J.D. Spielman, who is the son of Rick Spielman, your buddy in Minnesota. I think this could possibly...
You're trying to bring this back full circle with like all the Viking references.
I think that this could be... no, Stefan Diggs was Maryland. I think this could be, again...
Still Big Ten.
A part of the offense that Scott Frost can at least lean on, and bringing so many guys from UCF, I think they can lean on at least that part of the offense and maybe get something good out of this freshman quarterback. And again, they have weapons on the outside as well. And then defensively, I'm not too worried because Scott Frost knows his defense. I mean, like I know he was a quarterback at Nebraska, but he was transferred over as a 3rd round draft pick as a safety, and has been mainly a defensive guy throughout his career coaching. So I think Scott Frost coming in with his background defensively, I think he could probably turn this Nebraska defense around. And as long as Adrian Martinez is able to do enough, I think they can get 6 to 7 wins this year.
Well, and the one thing that Nebraska hasn't had to deal with since, I'm going to start with Bo Pelini. They have, since Bo Pelini up until now, guess how many starting quarterbacks they have had?
Since Bo Pelini?
Since 2008, how many guys have they had start from 2008? Well, basically 9 seasons almost.
Okay. Well, 9 plus 7, 16.
16 quarterbacks in 9 seasons?
Yeah. Oh, they've only
4
4
starters.
I don't know how bad they were.
No, I
didn't know if they were like circling out and getting injured.
No, this is a situation where Nebraska has, 2008 when Bo Pelini came in.
It's such a shitty guess.
Yeah, you had Joe. 16 quarterbacks. They had Illinois, hometown guy, Joe Gans. I was in graduating high school. Did not follow Nebraska football when Joe Gans was the quarterback. Then the next year, Zach Lee was their main starter. He started that year, got benched in 2010 because here's the big thing. From 2010 to 2013,
that's the guy.
Taylor Martinez. And then from basically 2013 to 2016, you had Tommy Armstrong Jr. So for that gap of time,
those are the only 4 guys that made starts.
Exactly. Like they were the main. Well, they were the main passing leaders. They took most of the snaps in their 4 years.
Now maybe 16 doesn't look too bad because you're just going off stats here. All right? How many games did these guys start, Ricky Widmer? That's the question.
They are the ones where I'll have to look into that one. But those were like, especially for the last 2, when you go from Taylor Martinez into Tommy Armstrong Jr., like, you don't really have a question at quarterback. This is the first year in a long time where Nebraska, to me, has had a question at what are they going to do at quarterback.
I mean, even then, they haven't had great quarterbacks. I mean, Taylor Martinez was a good quarterback. I wouldn't say Taylor Martinez was a great quarterback.
Let's see. Taylor Martinez was there.
He looks great compared to all the other guys that you
Let's see. 2010 to 2013 is when Taylor Martinez was there. 2010, they went 10-4, lost in the Holiday Bowl to Washington. 2011, they went 9-4. That was third in the Big Ten Legends, first year for the Legends. They lost in their bowl game to South Carolina. 2012, they went 12-4, finished first of their side in the Legends, lost to Georgia in their bowl game. And then 2013, his last year, 9-4, tied for second in their division. They won their bowl game against Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, take it as you will, where, yeah, they were winning 10-9 games, but they were losing the bowl game, and they weren't getting to, like, the New Year Sixes. It was, or the big New Year Sixes. It was 2 years of the Holiday Bowl, 2 years of the Capital One Bowl.
Well, I think a big thing, too, I mean, even going back to Taylor Martinez, I mean, they have a massive run game. Last year, they didn't have a 500-yard rusher, let alone a 1,000-yard rusher. And, I mean, you look back at that Taylor Martinez days, Rex Burkhead, NFL pro, Amir Abdullah, an okay NFL pro. You know, I mean, like, they've had guys who were able to contribute to their run game, and they just have not had an offense in the past couple of years. And I know Scott Frost will fix the defense, but if they're able to solve that quarterback question, it could, it could clear the way for maybe 6 to 7 wins for this team.
Do you know the last running back for Nebraska to have over 1,000 yards in a season? It was 2014.
Ron Dane was Wisconsin.
This guy is currently in the NFL.
Amir Abdullah.
He had just over 1,600 yards
freak
on the ground. And he had 1,000 yards all 3 years. I think that he was
monster.
The starter for them. And then right before had, like you said, Rex Burkhead, 1,000-yard rusher for Nebraska.
And I mean, looking at their schedule, I mean, they're going to start off with 3 straight home games. Like, I think that they can go 3-0. They're playing Akron, they're playing Colorado, they're playing Troy. Toughest game in that.
Colorado.
Troy.
Maybe.
Troy was a really good program last year.
They did beat LSU last year.
They were a really good program. They've been a sleeper program. I think Troy is going to probably be the toughest game out of that one. Because Colorado wasn't great last year. And, I mean, outside of Isaiah Oliver, they didn't have any significant NFL pros on that team. And you're losing your best player in Isaiah Oliver. He was the best part of that Colorado team. I think you could possibly go 3-0 with that one loss being to Troy. I think you're going to lose at Michigan. Purdue is a winnable game, so I'll give you 3 wins there.
Purdue's the interesting one because that's one where Purdue fans are expecting a second step in year 2 of Jeff Brom.
But also that's at home where Scott Frost, in your first Big Ten home game,
you got to win it.
You got to win it. So I think I'll give that win to Nebraska. As much as it pains to say me, I think that they can beat Northwestern at Ryan Field, and then I think they can beat Minnesota. And 100% offense to you, I think they're going to beat the shit out of Illinois.
Oh, you're telling me they can't beat Lovey's gray beard?
6.
They can't beat the Lovey gray beard?
And that levels out to 6 wins because they're not going to beat Iowa at Iowa. They probably aren't going to beat Michigan State. They're not going to beat Ohio State. I don't think they're going to beat Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to beat Michigan. So it really depends on that Troy game, and it depends on that Northwestern game. But I think they can have the path to 6 or 7 wins and go to a bowl game.
To me, if you're a Nebraska fan, 6-6 is going to be good for you.
Yeah.
And the reason being is, hey, you're not going to win. Like, to me, look at their conference schedule. It's exactly what you said. No way you beat Michigan at the big house. Wisconsin will beat you at their house. I feel like Northwestern Ryan Field might be a toss-up. I would still maybe give that to Northwestern right now.
Well, I don't know how they're going to look, though. I mean, like, their quarterback's okay with that. They just lost their leading rusher, Justin Jackson, so it's going to be interesting.
On the road, too. So, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. That's why it's not a huge push the needle, but it's a
back-to-back road games. So where you have that's your second time going on the road. You're going to go into Camp Randall, and Camp Randall, compared to Ryan Field, that's going into the deep end to
the shallow
a kiddie pool. So, I mean, no offense to Northwestern fans, but you're not Camp Randall. And you're also facing a worse program in Northwestern.
Like you said, no way you're winning at the Horseshoe. I don't think you win at Iowa.
And you got the elite of the elites in this schedule. And I know Nebraska's in the West because they used to be an elite of the elite. And I think Scott Frost can get them there in 3 years. It's just, again, dependent on how quickly are they going to buy into this, into the Scott Frost system?
And that's, to me, where 6 wins, like the games that you threw out there, I totally agree, can be totally winnable. That's why the 2 that I'm going to like put under the microscope this year, Minnesota and Purdue. Because the thing that if we go next level on those 2 games, yeah, those are games that most people would expect you to win. But Purdue, like I said, many Purdue fans, and Matt's one of them, one of our patrons, Matt, he's really looking for an improved season for Jeff Brom in year 2 at the head of Purdue. Same thing with Minnesota. A lot of Minnesota fans are expecting PJ Fleck to give them more wins than last year. If one of those teams comes up to play against you, basically, rah, you're like, this is our World Series, this is our Super Bowl, and they beat you, then that could ruin your 6-win goal because of, like we said, the Michigans, the Wisconsins, the Ohio State. Then you would have to win at Ryan Field, because if you don't win that game, great. Or you have to win now at home against Michigan State, because if you don't win one of those 2 games, now you're a 5-7 team and not make it. Well, you might still be able to make a bowl game because of how crappy the pool has been, but you won't get an automatic lock to a bowl game.
Yeah, I think that, again, bowl should be the goal for rhymes.
Bowl should be
the goal for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I think, and probably best case scenario, you get 7 wins. Worst case scenario, you go 4-8 again.
Yeah, this is a team that last year 3-6. 3-6 in conference overall. They went 4-8 last year. Whereas like Minnesota, I said they were expecting big things. 2-7 last year in conference, 5-7 overall. Where Purdue was 4-5, 7-6 overall. So I mean, those are kind of where you are. Some people might say we're overhyping Iowa too, because last year they were a 4-5 team within the conference and only 8-5 overall.
Spanked the hell out of Ohio State, and still
at
again,
home, where Nebraska is going to be playing.
Still, again, one hell of a team. Final game of the season, you're going to be at home. It's going to be an extremely tough game. I mean, Iowa is a team that consistently comes up and plays against big opponents. So if you're coming in winning, Scott Frost's first year, you're trying to get a win here at in Iowa. I forget their stadium name. At Iowa, it's going to be a tough game. Iowa's going to give you a tough one.
I'm going to say they have the best tradition now in college football. The Wave to the Children's Hospital. That's the best.
Well, I feel bad saying, you should be waving at patients at a children's hospital. I mean, like that. I'm like Satan if I say that, but like I'm just, again, like it's so overplayed on social media. Like they're still playing B-roll of it, like in December, like not even December, in like April. It's like, okay, we know this happens. And come on.
And I know it's a different team. I know it is, but just to give you some kind of context of how things went last year. So November 4th, Iowa beats Ohio State 55-24. The next 2 games, at Wisconsin, home against Purdue, they lose both of those games. They play Nebraska in Nebraska on Thanksgiving weekend. Guess what the score of that game is, and guess who wins? Iowa, 56-14. I know it's a different year. I know Scott Frost is there. But I could see that happening again this year, especially with it being in Iowa and depending on what we see with this Nebraska team. Any final thoughts on Nebraska before we close out the podcast?
Go Cornhuskers.
Go Cornhuskers. Well, this is where...
And I miss you, Taylor Martinez.
We're going to turn it... Was he the main Nebraska guy that you remember watching?
Yeah, back in the day? Nebraska football in my lifetime, at least my lifetime, has not been memorable.
No. It's been Taylor Martinez. And it's been then Tommy Armstrong Jr.
It's been Taylor Martinez and that picture of Bo Pelini holding a cat.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. Will Scott Frost turn around Nebraska this season? Can he turn them around this season? What do you expect for the Cornhuskers down below in the comment section? I want to thank you guys for sticking around either for the segment or for the full podcast on podcast services around the world or on YouTube if you're listening to the full thing. A little bit of housekeeping here at the end. Number 1, make sure to check out the store to get your MVP t-shirt. Check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast to support the channel and become like Matthew, who we referenced in this segment, who a huge Purdue fan. He will be on for our Purdue segment our Purdue preview later this year. Crossing our fingers that works out. Also, check out iTunes and Apple Podcasts. Give the Primetime Podcast a 5-star rating. And last but not least, Most Valuable Podcast is where you're going to catch everything for MVP each and every day. Want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Want to thank Sean for filling in for Brandon this week.
Of course.
Want to thank you guys for watching, not filling in. For filling in. For listening on podcast services around the world.
Please don't sue us, Phil DeFranco.
And as always, have a good day, everybody.